Here's a few cutting techniques I like to use when I'm out in the woods, especially once your fire's up and running like this one is here, and all we're doing is adding on logs. So these techniques I like to use with my large knives. So here's a few chopping tips with the Kukri that I use quite a lot. One of them is the spine whacking to take off, as you can see, these branches running up the side here of this pole. And the reason we use that is just basically preserve the edge of your blade. If it's a large blade like this one here, Kukri, you can use this with your machetes, any large blade really. So I'll show you how we do a few techniques with the Kukri. Whacking, get a nice comfortable grip in, like that, and hit it at a 45-degree angle. Same again. It just takes these off, the smaller ones, just a slight hit like that. Hopefully I'm in shot for this. Hold it in, 45, off we come. There we go. And that will help the beginner when he's out in the woods preserve the edge that he spent a good bit of time sharpening. And I do understand the Kukri can be really difficult for a beginner to sharpen, and the guys who are experienced as well, especially if you don't have the tools out in the field with you. So same again down here, off it comes. Right, the next one I'd like to show you then is a double 45. So basically what we're doing is we're going to hit the pole here at a 45-degree angle, and hopefully that should be all the cuts as required. Now this is about at the top here, I'd say 4 inches. So let's see how we get on with that. So here's the first cut, right in like that. You can see that. Then what we do for there is to spin it round the exact opposite side. You can see there's the angle coming down here for this side. Have a look, and this time when you hit the pole, what we need to do is apply as much pressure as we can to the top of the pole, pushing it through the floor. So there's the first cut here, we come up, and there you go. So that was 2 hits with using that technique, and it just stops all this chop, 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 chopping to get through. In time, it's basically just going to dull your blade, and you're going to need it for other things. Where that nice simple chop is an easy way to getting through wood if you require wood this thick once your fire is established. So these just get formed straight on the fire. There's a wee couple of techniques for you. You've probably seen them before, but it's good to get a quick reminder. And it takes a wee bit of practice for the beginner. And I've got a Kukri today, but you can do that with a machete. Any large knife that you have, usually about kind of 8 inches and larger. A lot of people struggle doing feather sticks with a large knife, and it's just down to the physics, isn't it? It's the weight, the length, and where the pivot point is to the cutting edge that makes it more difficult. So it does take a fair bit of practice. So we normally kind of do this type of feather like this, and my mate Ryan that you see on the channel is moving out to Australia, and he's taking his Kukri, and he is absolutely terrible at doing feathers, and it all comes down to he just doesn't put enough time into it. And he could do with a helping hand with a couple of techniques. So this is one I'm going to show you, and it's for Ryan also. So if it's large like this and unwieldy and hard to control, and you haven't got the grip strength, but it's the knife you have actually got out in the day of the race, well, here's a technique that maybe help you. So first of all, what we need to do is get the exposed tang or the butt and place it in your leg like this. And what that does is gives you the pivot point to manoeuvre the blade up and down when required, and also change the angle of the blade like this. Then what we do is we just place your stick that you're going to be doing the feathers with, push against the leg and then drag the stick up the blade, and that way it's giving you a much more secure blade, and it's much easier to hold in position and keep it fixed while you draw your stick up the blade. And it maybe make things a bit easier for you, or it might make the difference between feathers that won't light and feathers that can light, by simply having the control and getting nice feathers that are thin enough to take to a fire steel. And there you can see I've got it fixed here. Just adjust that, don't put too much pressure on here. You maybe need to change the angle, and you know some of the wood, especially pine, has some open grain which slips across and it feels quite stuttery, but this gives you that control. With this kukri here, we have a large finger choil. A lot of them don't have that, so you'll be up here, but I can still do it down here. It's close to that and it's even easier for me, but I take advantage of this and push that blade against me like that. And it'll just take a bit of time to get used to it, but it's another technique you can use with a large blade. There's loads of them, I've shown some previously on my channel, but here's another one. When you're just sitting down at the fire and you're preparing your feather sticks for the next day or your next fire or the next time you're out. The only restriction you get here is depending on the length of this stick, if it sticks into your stomach as you're pulling. Okay, so you maybe need to adjust yourself and pull that at a different angle. With a recurve and a kukri, that'll work no problem. You know, so you get this. Now it's just another technique that you can do while sitting at the fire, and it's something else you can add to your armoury. It maybe work for you, it maybe won't. It all depends on the knife and the style, the cutting edge that the blade has. This is a recurve on this, and you might be good enough that you can just go like this, but there is a lot of people who struggle with that. I've put the practice in, the time in, you know, but maybe your kids will want to learn this and it's just a bit unwieldy because of the weight and the length of the blade. It's just another technique to try. So why don't you give this one a bash? They're good enough to take to light with a fire steel or a lighter. That, 2 hands free this time. Just draw up and you can see the blade is fixed. And it lets you use all the blade. And you can make them as thick as you want and as thin as you want, depending on what part of the blade. Here, with this blade being so large, I can actually hold it, and this is usually one of the quicker ways of doing it. And this is a technique I use when I'm not too fussed how large these are, because I've actually got my first initiating feather stick done. But you can see how quick this is working. And the advantage of having a large blade is you can hold it and stabilise it. But with a lot of the kukris, they don't have an exposed tang like this one, and they're not suitable for hitting into trees like this. And this is why we developed this kukri with that in mind. So this is another one I would recommend for Ryan when he goes out to Australia. and you can really pick up the pace on this. So there you go, does them, no problem, and with a good bit of speed. If you need further sticks rapidly to get a fire up and going. Right, so there's another technique.